Well, good afternoon, everyone. Lady Victoria here with Victoria School of Etiquette. I am live at the moment, and happy Monday to everyone. Happy Monday. I'm streaming live on, I think, three different platforms on this afternoon. I am on my etiquette page, I am on my personal page, and I am on my ministerial page, WCY Ministries. That's my ministerial page. But I wanted this to go live across all of those platforms um, so that I would kill all of those birds with one stone. This is Mind Your Manners Mondays, and I am addressing the topic of titles, honorifics, pre and post nominals, and more. Titles, honorifics, and nominals. And this is the first time that I will address this topic in depth. I have addressed it before, but not in depth like I am going to do this time around. This won't just be, this is the first video. This won't be one video about this topic, but there will be several. So it will probably end up being a small mini series. And as we progress with this topic, I will go deeper and I will address other issues related to this topic or other things that I think is very important for people to know about the topic of titles and honorifics, how we address people in the public domain, how we address people that have certain titles that mean certain things, and people that also have nominals behind their name, the pre-nominals and post-nominals, and those nominals mean something when they are attached to a person's name. So it will behoove us as individuals to know what they mean, and especially if you, of course, if you're in the business and corporate world, if you are international, if you are in politics, you don't have to be into anything, but just to know for yourself. You never know when you might be called upon to make an address to a person, even within the company that you work for, or even within your own business as you advance. There are things that you want to know where your name is concerned or where your title is concerned, how they should be properly addressed, how you should be properly addressed, and if you are using the correct nominals and you are using the correct form of address. Okay? All of those things are important. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the broadcast, broadcasting live across three different platforms here. And so I can't see the comments on some of the pages. I don't know which ones I can't see it on, but I will address your comments at the end. If I see them live here, then I will address them here. But if I don't see them live, at the end of the broadcast, I will address your commentary. So thank you for jumping on, for hopping on, and thank you for sharing across your various social media platforms. I appreciate that. Okay, okay, that's something that Reese was telling me. Anywho, once again, let me introduce myself. I am Lady Victoria with Victoria School of Etiquette, and this is Mind Your Manners Mondays. Mind Your Manners Mondays, where I am addressing uh, titles, honorifics, pre and post nominals. I sometimes have a problem saying that word correctly. But we're going to address those various forms of address. We want to talk about what they mean, why it's important to use them, when you should use them, and all of that. So let's first get started by addressing what is a pre and a post nominals. What are nominals? Nominals are just another form of a title that every person has. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Please like and share across your social media platforms, and then don't be afraid to comment in the chat. If I don't see your response, it's because I know one or two of the platforms I can't see them here in the chat on Restream, but at the end of the broadcast, I will address your comments. So what are pre and post nominals? It is a social form of address, and it is simply Mr., Mrs., Miss, That is a pre-nominal because it precedes your name. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Post-nominals, of course, come after your name. Post-nominals can be a title or it can be a collection of letters. The letters might be like your MA, your BA, your PhD, your doctorate. That is a post nominal. Some people, of course, have more than one post nominal. Should you use all of them when you are being addressed? No. Hi, Pam. Thank you for joining. No, you should not. Oh, it's Evangelist Pam. God bless you, Evangelist Pam. Thank you for joining. You should not use all of them at one time. You only need to use the nominals, the post nominals that are applicable at that time. Now, let's say that you are a pastor, okay? But let's say that you've recently completed your PhD and you want that added to your name. It's only fair that it is added to your name because people should recognize that accomplishment. Okay, so the post nominal should only be added after you have received after you have completed your course and after you have actually received your degree in hand. Now, oftentimes when you're graduating from college, you may not graduate for several weeks afterwards. So you can share, of course, with your family and friends, but when it is going to be used in a verbal or oral presentation, and most especially when it is going to be used as a written invitation, whether you're sending the invitation or receiving the invitation, it is important that everything is taken care of before you start using it in the public domain. So now I was going to do ecclesiastical titles and all of that in another video. And I definitely will because I think there's so much coverage that needs to be taught about that. You never want to embarrass your leadership by using the incorrect information. In his local assembly, you may simply, at his request, be called Pastor Bob. But when Pastor Bob is called to go out and speak at an engagement, you need to know all of the correct information. You call him Pastor Bob, but is he really a bishop? Is he an overseer? What is his clergy title? The proper clergy title should be applied at that time. So I'll get into the specifics of all of that in a later teaching. Like I said, this will end up being a mini series, but I simply wanted to come on today and just address. Thank you, Evangelist Pam. I wanted to address the different types of titles that we have. Now we have the professional titles, right? That is, thank you. That is your professional titles is more than likely associated with what you do, your job. So if you work at a university and you are a professor, you're Professor Williams in the classroom. But outside of the classroom, you may prefer that people just call you by your first name. Let's say your first name is Henry. Okay. So you're just Henry outside of the classroom. But being a professor inside the university, when he is addressed publicly, even by his students, by other staff members, they should refer to him as Professor, right? Professor William. Okay. Now he can say off record, oh, you can just call me by my first name. That's amongst friends. But in a professional setting, within the university, that is how he should be addressed. Verbal address is oftentimes very different than written address. The same example that I gave before about your pastor, he's Pastor Bob at church, but is he really a bishop? When he is receiving or sending a written invitation, you are going to use the correct pre-nominal and the correct post-nominal that is applicable to his title and also to the event that he is attending. Let's say that Bishop is an accomplished tennis player and he's being honored and getting some kind of, award or getting some kind of plaque or something. That situation is going to be different. Okay. So he's not necessarily going to use his PhD at the end of the nominals then. But because he's an accomplished tennis player and he's, getting an award or something to that effect, then you can say, oh, he's won 10 tournaments. And whatever accolades he's been given behind that, it's applicable to use that then. Okay. So, Mr., Mrs., Miss, Ms., those are all pre-nominals that we use. Ms., I use Ms. Victoria Dubose. It is a social nominal. Here on Facebook and on social media, my name here, I'm often referred to as Lady Victoria. That is another social nominal. I use it in this circle, not necessarily outside of the social media circle. Okay? So we need to know the difference between what these things mean and why we use them. We use them to give honor to the person who's using it. So I'm just Miss Victoria Dubose, right? So everywhere I go, I could use that. It's applicable everywhere. Again, Lady Victoria is applicable here. Mr. And let me interject right here also that I am only addressing how we use titles, honorifics, pre and post nominals in American society. It is different when you go to other parts of the world. You have to know these things. If you are a world traveler or you're someone that travels internationally, when you go to other countries, you need to know what those nominals are. You need to know which title and honorific to use, and you need to know to use how to use them correctly so you don't embarrass yourself. Okay? So you have the social ones, you have the professional ones that includes doctors, lawyers, in the ministerial arena, of course, bishops and pastors and elders. You want to make sure that you're using the correct one. Just because you've been a member of your church for 25 years, it may not mean that because you've been there for all that time, you know that your pastor is a bishop. Do you know how to spell his name? If you are sending your pastor, and his spouse an invitation to your child's wedding, do you know how to properly spell their name? Now, my name, for instance, protocol is key. Exactly. My name, for instance, Victoria. Vicky is short for Victoria. I use Victoria everywhere I go. My family members call me Vicky all the time. They call me that, all their lives. So that's fine. But you need to know. Let's say that I was using Vicky. How do you spell it? Oh, Vickie. No, that's not how I spell mine. I spell mine Vicki. Oh, another Vicky. That's not how I spell mine. Mine is Vickey. Another Vicky. Mine is spelled Vikki. How many different ways are there to spell a person's name? Someone's name is Jonathan. You assume that it is that John would be the derivative for that name. Even though that is correct, the person that you are addressing as Jonathan, do you just call him John because you think that's a short term? He's never used it before with you in communication, but you decide that you're going to use that. Ask first. It's that person's name. They want to be identified in a certain way. If you are spelling out Jonathan, how is it spelled? There's more than one way to spell it. Ask. And I always say, ask the person. You want to know how to spell your pastor's name, ask him. You can ask his personal secretary at church. Sure, you can. You can ask his spouse. Sure, you can. But I've learned to ask the person. Again, another example, my last name, Dubose. It is spelled Dubose. But I get asked all of the time, they say, what's your full name? Victoria Dubose. Oh, is it Du Bois? I just said that it's Dubose. And then I spell it for people. It's capital D, lowercase u, capital B, O-S-E. There's no I. There are a lot of Du Boises in the world. Mine is just Du Bose, not Du Bois, not Du Boise. Yes, it is French. When I married my husband, that's how he was already spelling his last name. D-U capital B-O-S-E. There are plenty of people that spell it with a lowercase d. We do not. And that's okay. But just ask. You cannot assume that you have the correct spelling for a person's name. Okay? So we've talked about professionals. Professors, doctors, lawyers, lawyers and attorneys are the same thing. Find out which one they said. I am a lawyer. They say I am an attorney at law. I found out that some people spell name different on social media than in the real world. That is very, very true because they have taken a social status with that. It would be called a social status. And that's okay. That's okay. But I've learned to always ask, how do you spell your name? And if necessary, I will ask the person, can you please write your name out for me in my notebook? Because maybe I'm conditioned to think that your name is spelled Vickey, but you spell yours Vickie. So because I'm conditioned this way, I may just revert to what's familiar to me, what's comfortable. But if I see it written down in your own handwriting, then that's going to trigger me to remember, oh, this is how this person spells their name. Okay? So the professional titles, that's considered a pre-nominal, and it always, 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 always goes in front of that person's name. Well, again, when you're addressing them verbally, you may say just Ms. Victoria Dubose. But if I have a doctorate and I go by doctor, then it would be Dr. Victoria Dubose. You always want to acknowledge that status. It is important. That is my professional status. As an example, that would be my professional status. So you always use that. That's the pre-nominal. The post-nominals are going to come at the end of a person's name. So it's very easy to remember. Pre, of course, means prior to, before. Post means after the fact. So pre is going to precede that person's name, okay? Their title. Then their full name, Victoria. I just use my middle initial L, and then Dubose, comma, whatever that post nominal is. PhD, you know, uh, MA, whatever it is, then you put it behind it. And again, this is American style only. It's done different in other countries. It's done different in the UK. For ecclesiastical or clergy here in America, and then it depends upon what Reformation you are also, because what does your Reformation use? Okay, Pentecostal, Lutheran, and Lord, now my name is Pentecostal, Lutheran, Baptist. Oh my gosh, there's one other. I can't recall it right now. But those Reformations kind of follow the same protocol when it comes to titles. We're going to use bishop or reverend. Some use the most reverend. Some might use honorable reverend. Know what your Reformation uses and apply that. Know what your Reformation uses and apply that when it comes to clergy and ecclesiastical. So the most reverend also has a doctorate. Now, I'll tell you where I get most of my research from from this. I am a certified etiquette consultant for those of you that may not know, and I've been doing it for over 12 years now. But when I am in doubt, I'm going to go to a book entitled Forms of Address by Robert Hickey. Robert Hickey is a world renowned. His book, there are other books that talks about form of address, but his book has been the number one standard that protocol professionals deal with. I mean, the White House, the military, heads of state, heads of countries, they go by the protocol that he has set up. He grew up in a military home and his parents worked in government. So he is the world renowned foremost authority on forms of address, what is correct. And in his book, he does address the ecclesiastical body and the forms of address that we use. So your pastor could be called Reverend or Bishop, but he also has his doctorate. In this case, he's going to have like two prenominals. His authority as a clergy a clergy leader supersedes the doctorate that he has in business, because that's also his clergy title is also his profession. So that's going to come first, whether he's addressed as bishop, reverend, the most reverend, whatever uh, um, pre-title that he has, whatever prenominal that he uses in his local assembly, that will come first. Okay. Bishop Dr. William Henry. The invitation, that is a written invitation. And a verbal, when you're speaking openly, you're introducing him, you would do the same thing. In a less formal setting, you would do the same thing if you're writing it out. Okay. So you have to know those major differences in clergy and in the professional world as well. Know what their prenominal is, know how their name is spelled correctly, and then you most certainly always need to know the order in which it is spoken and the order in which it is written. I didn't even address military titles. I'll probably do a separate one for that because it's a lot of information to go through, and I don't want to bombard my listening audience and those that are watching, those that will catch the live later. I don't want to bombard you with too much information at one time. Some of you are already in your professional settings, and of course, you may know this. Some of you might be in professional settings and don't know this perhaps as well as you should. And so I intend for this to be an educational resource for people to refer back um, to make sure that they're getting the right information and that they are using it in the right way, right? So again, invitations, and I started talking about if you are inviting their spouse. So it is going to be Bishop Dr. William Henry and Mrs. Henry. Now, we know that in the Pentecostal world, our wives of bishops and pastors are referred to as first ladies. Okay. In that setting, you can use that. If the first lady is being awarded something within her community for the work that she's done with women in her community, you need to sit down and talk about that. The person or the organization that is awarding this certification or whatever it is that she might be receiving, you want to have a good understanding of what it is that she's receiving. Just get all the information that you can about it. And if they are assigning her an honorary title for the work that she's doing, okay? So in that instance, she's the woman of prominence. So the invitation would be addressed to her first, and then her husband name would come after hers. Okay? You're so welcome, Evangelist Pam. You're so welcome. Thank you for joining. So that's all really that I'm going to cover today. I do have another appointment that I need to get to, and I don't want to run over. But this is just a short introduction about titles and honorifics, and we will come back. I will come back rather, and address this again. It will probably be always on Mondays. I'll try to do it a little earlier in the day, but Mondays is always a jam-packed day for me. So we'll see how it works out. But thank you for those that joined and those that will catch the replay later. Again, please share across your various social media platforms, and don't be afraid to put your questions or comments in the chat. If I can't see it, some of them I can't see because I'm streaming live from Restream. So I might not be able to see all of the chats across all of the three platforms that I'm on, but at the end of it, I will go back on each platform and I will review and I will respond to your chats or your questions. And if this is, we're discussing this topic, if there's something particular that you'd like to know about this topic of titles, honorifics, and how they're used, you can always email me at vsetc16 at gmail.com. Victoria School of Etiquette. You can just call me Pam. Bless you. Thank you. Okay. See? Now, until she told me differently, I was addressing her by the title that I know her to have, but she's just giving me permission. So thank you. Thank you, Pam. Thank you so much. Yes. So if you would like for me to discuss a particular topic or a particular area of this topic, just email me. Email me at vsetc16 at gmail.com. I will get the notification and I will respond to it. So thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate your presence and your comments. I have to get running, but the Lord says the same. I'll see you again next week and we'll continue this topic further. God bless you all. Lady Victoria, signing off. Until the next time. Bye for now.